The White House press corps go after Karine Jean-Pierre. Ron DeSantis torches Joe Biden regarding his student loan forgiveness plan. And Joe Biden's plan could worsen military recruitment numbers. All that and more here on The Bald Brad Show. Welcome to The Bald Brad Show. It is Friday, August 26th, and as always, couldn't be happier than to end the week off right, doing The Bald Brad Show and hanging out with all of you, my friends and true American patriots, where we come together as a community of conservatives and Republicans, go over the stories of the day, and bring you all the news and information you need to know about. So heck, if you want to join us here at The Bald Brad Show, and we hope that you do, hit that like and subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, Apple, Google, Spotify, heck, folks, you find us anywhere and everywhere. And we do have quite a following on the podcasting services. Leave us a lovely 5-star review. Not only would you be supporting conservative, but most importantly, you'd be helping getting conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. And also, folks, don't forget to watch the videos all the way through. It really does help the YouTube algorithm. It's doing yeoman's work for us here at The Bald Brad Show. We are growing. Like I said, we surpassed 12,000 subscribers. The goal for this year, folks, was 10,000. So we are doing great stuff here, as are all of you, putting in the work, doing the work as conservatives and Republicans to get our voices out and our voices heard. Now, Joe Biden's back from vacation, you guys. And like I said, there was something to be said about him staying on vacation because there were fires around us, all this craziness going on, but at least there wasn't new ones being sparked while he was on vacation. Now that he's back, you got this whole student loan debt forgiveness, and it's pissing a lot of people off, including myself. And not just Republicans and conservatives, but you got Democrats. And recently, just yesterday, Thursday, the White House press corps has been going after Karine Jean-Pierre about getting answers of who's going to pay for it, how does this not increase the deficit, how does this not increase inflation, all these questions, because look, they're just like all of us. They had student debt as well. They didn't get it paid off for them. So they're a little upset. So now what Joe Biden has done is put us all together, the media, the conservatives, Republicans, and some Democrats, and we ain't happy about it. So just yesterday, you didn't have Peter Doocy, but we had Jacqui Heinrich of Fox News, who goes in every now and then when Peter Doocy isn't there, and she pressed Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre during Thursday's briefing, asking why the pandemic only seemed to be an emergency when it suited President Joe Biden's agenda. Now, where are we going with this? If you recall, the Biden administration had argued, even in court, by the way, that the COVID emergency had passed when the goal was to lift Title 42, which we talked about at length here on the show. So again, the goal was to lift Title 42 restrictions and to allow illegal immigrants to flood across the U.S.-Mexico border. She then pointed out the Biden administration was relying on a loose interpretation of what they call the HEROES Act, and the ongoing COVID emergency was to justify his sweeping plan to cancel billions of dollars worth of federal student debt. So on one hand, he's using the COVID thing to lift restrictions. On the other hand, he's using COVID as well as the HEROES Act to try to push his agenda on everybody. So it seems a little strange and a little odd. Now, we're going to watch the clip here between the exchange between her and Karine Jean-Pierre. Do you think that she answers the question, or do you think she kind of dodges it? I think y'all know. Let's go ahead and watch it.
I want to ask about the legal basis for canceling student debt. The HEROES Act hinges on student debt cancellation being tied to the pandemic and that being a national emergency. But the administration argued in court that the pandemic is over at the southern border to lift Title 42. It's so over that the government's going to stop buying vaccines in the fall and shift to the private sector. So how is this a national emergency? How's COVID a national emergency when it comes to student debt?
So it's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Look, we use the HEROES Act because there are going to be some people, when we lift the pause, that's still going to suffer. They're still going to have a little bit of a hard time. And so that's one of the reasons that we made this decision. Because as we're lifting up the pause, yes, some folks having not to pay for 2 years has been helpful to them, and we're able to save, and are probably going to be able to pay those monthly payments. But there's going to be some folks who are going to have a hard time.
Because of the economy?
Because because they're just in a different bracket, right? It just because they've probably had a hard time before. We have to remember this is a system. So he announced the pause, lifting up the pause. He announced the 10,000 and up to 20,000 for Pell Grant recipients who, as I said, many of them have a household nearly making 60,000, and half of that, half of the Pell Grant recipients are 30,000 household, $30,000 a year household, and so the other piece of that is a reform, right? Reforming the system as well, so we can help nurses, so we can help construction workers, so we can help firefighters, and making sure that their payment are cut in half as well. Because those, remember, these are some of our first respondents, right, who also suffered so much from the past 2 years. So he wanted to make sure he gave them a little bit of relief, understanding that some folks are just going to have a little bit of a harder time, even though we're coming out of a pandemic and the economy has been turned back on because of the work that this president has done.
She didn't answer the question. She just sat there and rambled, said a bunch of cockamamie things, never answered the question. Typical. And the press are catching on, because the press, what they're all starting to do is ask the same questions. That's why we don't cover every single press reporter that's within that room with her, because they've all caught on to this of like, who's going to pay for it? Why is it okay to do it here with Title 42, but you're going to sit there and do it over here using the HEROES Act with COVID-19, but you said that COVID wasn't an issue anymore for Title 42, so we should lift it. But all of a sudden, COVID's an issue now with student loans, so why are you putting it in place and just utilizing it for a benefit? Let's continue.
That was another thing I was going to mention. I mean, the president often says that we're not in a recession because we've got, record job market, record low unemployment, businesses investing in America at record rates. Mm-hmm. So why are those appropriate conditions to forgive student debt?
Well, thank you for laying out all the work that the president has done. That is 1,000% correct. But we've also said that we know that some people are still suffering. You've heard us say that too.
Why does she keep saying people are suffering? I mean, we all know why, right? It's a PR statement of like, oh, well, people are suffering. It's going to pull at our heartstrings as Americans because we tend to want to help people that are suffering. And so if we can word it that way of Americans are suffering, then, hey, we should help out our neighbor. We should help out other Americans and give them the money. And that's what leftists are saying. That's what the progressive left are currently saying of, oh, well, Republicans and conservatives, as well as Democrats, always say that instead of sending Ukraine and everybody billions of dollars, we should be spending that money here locally on other Americans. The issue is that I don't owe another American to pay off the debt of which they incurred. And I paid off my debt. I worked 3 jobs to pay off my student loans. I didn't ask the government for a bailout. I didn't ask the government for anything. But no, it's just going to be this period of time that gets a bailout. Screw everybody else that was before. It's so baffling that she's going to sit there and dodge the question of which I think a lot of Americans deserve answers for, especially those that freaking voted for this guy, of why isn't those that are pre this package here or this plan getting their stuff paid for? You were okay with sending freaking COVID-19 checks out with their hotcakes. All of a sudden that's a problem. All of a sudden you don't want to do that anymore. Interesting how that all works out, huh?
Yes, the economy can be turned back on, and we've created, to what you've just laid out, nearly 10 million new jobs since the president took office. That matters. The economy is stronger than it's been in some time. And we have said that, you've heard the president say that, there's still some folks who need a little bit more help. And this is what the president is trying to do. Both can be true. It's not one or the other.
Well, the Washington Post editorial board says that
and then I'm going to go to the back because we're running out of time.
Doesn't help those people though. That it takes money from the broader tax base, mostly made up of workers who didn't go to college, to subsidize education debt of people with valuable degrees. Mm-hmm. So sort of rebutting what you had just said. But beyond that, there are critics who are saying that this is not about the pandemic. It's not about those conditions. That this is about getting people to vote ahead of the midterms, and that the real national emergency is Democrats in the midterm elections.
Well, I mean, I disagree with everything that you just laid out. I was just asked a question by some Democrats who are saying that they're not happy with this, right? Who are criticizing this. And we have said we're not going to make everybody happy. And so if you're not making everybody happy, you cannot say that that what you just laid out is certainly cannot be the case either. Look, here's what I will say, and this is just what we have laid out about this program. This is historical, what we're doing. It has never been done before. When you look at the system is broken. And we're trying to reform it so that we can help people who really need it. The way that this president has done this, he's done it in a targeted way. So it helps. It doesn't give a penny to anybody making more than 120. Let me finish. More than 125,000.
You guys, just to put it in perspective, $125,000 is a lot of money. If you struggle, this is me being frank, and there might be Bald Bradshaw viewers that are in the 125th, at least in terms of monetary, right, money that you're getting, your income, $125,000. If you struggle paying off your student loans with $125,000, go see a financial advisor because you're doing something wrong with your finances. $125,000 is an astronomical amount of money here in the United States in terms of what everybody else is making. I don't even make I don't make anywhere, not even the same ballpark as $125,000. I live in California. I was able to pay off over $60,000 of student loans by working multiple jobs, and covering my budget, making sure that I planned it out accordingly in a year and a half. AOC makes over $120,000. Rather than going and paying off her student loans, what'd she go decide to do? Buy a Tesla. So just because you pay off student loans does not mean you're going to fix the behavioral economic platform in terms of why people and how people are spending their money. I love this because they go on later from the administration and talk about, this is going to open up other avenues for people to go and extend their education. So if they couldn't afford to pay off their loan and go to school in the first place, and like I said, pay off the loan as well, then they're going to go to grad school and take out more loans? How would you pay for the grad school if you couldn't even pay off your loan in the first place? Because if you're going to spend that money that you do have going to grad school without taking out a loan, that's bad behavior in terms of your spending, because that spending should be going back towards what you just previously borrowed before on an interest rate. So again, it all comes back to the financial behavior of the individual. So this whole thing of people struggling, all those things, you knew how much college was. If you didn't, it's not my fault that you freaking were ramboozled, shammed, or whatever you want to call it by those universities. You should have done the research of, hey, USC is going to cost me $60,000+ to go to. Gee, do I have the money? If I don't, then I'm going to sign it, not expecting somebody else to bail me out. Especially if you're going for lesbian dance theory, underwater basket weaving, finger painting, and you're not getting the rate of return, or you were promised a job by the university and you're all shocked and going, oh my God, I don't have a job that's making six figures out of college and I just spent over $100,000 after 4 years. How am I going to pay for this? That's not my fault. Do I feel bad for you? Sure. But you should have made the necessary precautions to look at what school costs, how you're going to get that money back after college. But no. The Democrats just want to bail everybody out. The Democrats just want to give everybody money left and right. Wait till we get into how this is all going to come back later on in the future. Just wait. We got a lot of videos today for you folks. A lot.
And if you look at the Pell Grant recipients, we're talking about people, again, and I've said this multiple times in this briefing room today, and we said it multiple times yesterday, $60,000 household. We're talking about $60,000 household. And cut in half, right? There are people we're talking about people, Pell Grant recipients that are at $30,000 households. I mean, that's the people that we are going to help. Again, nurses, construction workers. When you think about the reform, I mean, we've just gone back. You've made your point. I've made my point. I'm going to move on because we are actually running out of time.
I love how she talks about the nurses and the firefighters, the first responders, but she's not talking about how, again, the fact that there's freaking people out there that are doing finger painting, basket weaving, basically these nonsensical majors, diversity, equity, inclusion classes, whatever it may be, that those people are getting their loans forgiven, but we're not going after the truckers. We're not going after, the people that actually need their loans forgiven. If we're going to talk about it, you're just going to do a blanket thing. Very similar to the COVID-19 checks. Not everybody needed to receive a COVID-19 check. Not everybody lost their jobs. Not everybody needed it. So rather than sitting there and actually doing it wisely, because, according to Karine, jean-pierre, this is all being done very smartly, according to them. Not everybody needs this. But they're just going to do a blanket thing, anything, over under 125,000, that's fine. We'll throw you 10 G's. Oh, you got this? Oh, well, here's another 20,000. Oh, by the way, this is going to go on until 2031 in the hopes that it just gets refunded every freaking year after year. It's just crazy how this government just spends money. So luckily, at least if freaking Peter Ducey's not there, you got her stepping up with this whole thing. And if you recall, Karine Jean-Pierre literally just said that the people who are likely to struggle probably had been struggling prior to the pandemic because they were in a different bracket and had benefited from the pause. But she made no move to address how skyrocketing inflation and gas prices might impact their ability to pick up their payments where they had left off after 2 years. She also concluded by claiming, without offering any evidence of how the administration intended to implement reforms, that the plan had been undertaken in part to reform the system to help the first responders who had suffered so much over the last 2 years. So she just says a bunch of stuff, doesn't explain how they're going to do any of it, and then she has to move on. Very similar to how Peter Doocy just the other day, and we covered it here, going, who is going to pay for it? One question. Who is going to pay for it? 7 words. She couldn't do it. She couldn't answer it. She doesn't know. The press keep following up. Well, who's going to pay for it? How does this not increase inflation? No answers. Well, I told you, Peter, we decreased the deficit by $1.7 trillion. Doesn't answer how to do it. Typical. Well, check this out, folks. In the long run, there's an analysis here that shows how quickly, basically, student debt is going to come back. Okay, and it's going to come back fast. The White House cannot say how much President Joe Biden's student loan debt forgiveness plan will cost taxpayers or how it will be financed. No clue. But remember, they're being smart about this. They've really thought about it. Except how much is it really going to cost? Which is the most important part, other than the fact of who it's going to. This is how government runs. We'll implement it. We'll figure out the costs later after it's already been implemented. Who the hell handles their finances that way on an individual basis? What are the details of all this? The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget published analysis on Wednesday showing how Biden's plan will cost taxpayers at least $500 billion over the next 10 years. Mind you, we're $20+ trillion in debt, folks. First, canceling $10,000 of student loan debt per borrower who earns less than $125,000 annually, and $20,000 for recipients of Pell Grants will cost an estimated $360 billion. This comes from the Penn-Wharton budget model. Quote, it will cancel about $525 billion of student debt. The cost of this cancellation is lower than the amount of debt itself because of the sum of that debt was already projected to be forgiven through other forgiveness programs or not paid back in full. Second, the new income-driven repayment plan, which significantly earns and eases the financial burden of borrowers in the Biden's action, will cost an estimated $120 billion. However, analysts caution this figure may not tell the entire story because the White House has not yet said who will be eligible. So they're just kind of shooting darts going, well, we think this is going to be the bottom number, how much it might cost. Do you think it's going to be more than that, folks? I think so. Third, extending the payment moratorium another 4 months will cost taxpayers another $20 billion. It's not like we're talking 20,000. It's not like we're talking 20 million. We're literally talking billions of dollars as if it's nothing. Like we just throw that word around like, billion, not a big deal. Oh, trillion? Who cares? People didn't refer to even trillions of dollars back in the 90s. If you were a millionaire, if you had $1 million, remember Richard from Survivor won $1 million? You could like survive on that your entire life back when Survivor started in the 90s. Now we're talking like trillions of dollars here. And everyone's like, whatever. It's $1 trillion. Who cares? Well, how is this all going to be financed? The White House said Thursday it believes the plan will fully be paid for, but has not said how because they don't know. They're just saying that. That's typical of them just to lie straight to your face. Importantly, Congress has not passed a law allocating money for the plan. Thus, it remains unclear how the plan will be financed. Where's the money coming from, Jen? Where's the money coming from, Joe? Where's the money coming from, Karine? Nobody can answer questions. Absent of congressional action, Biden is only, in other words, a top Obama administration advisor, Jason Furman, poorly roughly $500 billion of gasoline on the inflationary fire that is already burning is reckless. Extremely reckless. You have inflation up. You have gas prices up. I mean, now you plan on doing this when we're still trying to recover from the deficit that you put us in the first place, causing inflation of handing out, again, COVID-19 freaking checks like they're hotcakes. And now you're going to say, well, this doesn't increase inflation by basically paying off people's debt. So there's more money in circulation because people's debt were paid off. In a nutshell, handed them $10,000 to $20,000. So luckily you had Peter here, not Peter Doocy, another Peter reporter, basically questioning her on this regarding, well, the debt's just going to accumulate just back up in 5 years. So what's going to happen then? Let's check out what she has to say.
If I can ask you, just following up, I have some follow-ups on one quick one on that. We heard from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget today. You guys can't estimate what it'll cost. You want to see how many people take you up on it. But they estimate cancellation will eliminate about $550 billion in federal student loan debt. They say, however, we project that the overall amount of outstanding federal student loan debt will return to $1.6 trillion, its current level, within 5 years. So is the president committed to doing this again, or is this just a one-time deal?
You're asking me about a hypothetical that I don't.
Well, I guess I'm asking. Let's not be so.
I love how she goes, you're asking me about a hypothetical. Your whole plan is hypothetical. Like literally the plan itself, you don't even know how it's going to be paid for. Thus, I mean, literally to implement the plan would have to thus be hypothetical because you don't know where the money's going to come from. So how are you going to implement it if you have no money? They don't even know how they're going to implement it. I mean, some of the categories, they don't even know who's fully eligible for this stuff.
Specific at that's hypothetical. They say, this nonpartisan organization says, it's just going to go back up again. So is the president okay with this just being like a temporary relief thing, and then it's okay, and taxpayers will
I mean,
pay
it is a little bit of a hypothetical. You started off asking me the question that we don't know what the number is, which we don't. We have to see in order to for me to fully answer that question.
Does the White House believe that it will not go up again, that the federal student loan debt will not go up again, and that the ideas that the ambassador yesterday presented will stop the rising cost of college, and that debt will not continue to rise?
So look, when we talk about the rising cost of college, and I know this question, and you're talking about tuition. So look, we have taken steps on colleges raising tuition. This is something that the Department of Education, Secretary Cardona, it takes very seriously. He's been closely watching, and he's going to hold colleges accountable for raising costs without delivering additional value. So a couple of things those measures that we have taken, because I think this is important as you're asking me this question for Americans to hear. We reinstated an enforcement office at the Department of Education. We terminated a college accreditor that had previously followed colleges and that defrauded borrowers to get access to federal student loans, and we're rolling out new resources to help students make more informed decision on which schools will better deliver. So these are steps that he is taking. We will monitor, we will crack down on anybody who is acting in this way, that is defrauding students. That is something that you heard from Ambassador Rice herself. And then we have taken other steps, right? We have taken other steps through the American Rescue Plan to provide $40 billion for colleges and universities to support students, particularly at community colleges and minority institutions.
She's literally talking about how colleges and universities are being subsidized. If anybody knows how subsidies work, if you're subsidizing something, usually the trend of that thing that you're subsidizing, the price goes up for that thing that you're subsidizing, especially in the universities and colleges. I mean, they've been subsidized on a federal level for quite some time, even on sometimes a state level. So if you're being subsidized, you're getting money in, you can increase your prices of tuition because thus you're getting that money in, which also causes inflation, which also causes increased demand in some areas. And it also causes an increased demand of people taking out loans to pay for the very thing that you're trying to subsidize, of which other people are having to pay more because you're subsidizing it. So somehow they're saying they're reforming this thing, but they're not reforming anything. They're just looking at those creditors that are going after and targeting people, sure. But then at the same time, she's not actually talking about the universities that are basically promising people jobs in a nutshell when they're doing lesbian dance theory or underwater finger painting or whatever it may be that you're not going to get a job for, and promising them 6 figures, and they come out of school going, oh, I'm getting paid $10 an hour to freaking sell Cheez-Its on the side of the street or whatever the hell it might be. You're not getting a freaking job for lesbian dance theory or freaking diversity, inclusion, and equity, whatever the hell it may be. So why not have the universities pay for all this? Why are we paying for this as a taxpayer? It still doesn't make any sense to me. It's so baffling. So if whoever you're trying to blame here, have them pay for it. But the people that you're freaking having paying for it are the ones that you're not blaming, because we didn't do anything. You can't put the blame on me. You can't put the blame on all of you. So if she's going to put the blame on whatever's going on, these creditors or these freaking universities, have them pay for it.
Another thing that we've done is ask for Pell Grants to be doubled and a lot more. So we're going to try to do our best to keep those costs lower as we talk about tuition. But if we're going to do more, and we just have to see what that number looks like.
Understood. All that other.
By the way, just to always going back to the original question, because like we've seen so many times, she doesn't answer any of the questions. The question was basically, is he going to have to do this again, because if the debt's going to just come back in 5 years, are we just having this be a temporary debt relief, or does he plan on doing this again in maybe another 5 years if he gets reelected? Doesn't answer the question. Just dodges it. I mean, she answered a portion of his question, right, with the whole reform thing with the college and universities. But the main one was, this is going to come back. They're saying 5 years, nonpartisan groups saying so. What's your answer on that? Nothing.
Just litigate that. Let me move on to the topic I wanted to ask you about, which is the event that's taking place tonight. I know there's only so much you can say as it relates to politics.
All right, so he just goes on this whole event thing. But that was the main point there of how are you going to pay for it? It's coming back again. Should we just expect to see this again? In a nutshell, he was reiterating the whole behavioral economics, behavioral finance portion that I've been reiterating since freaking we've been doing the show here on Joe Biden, promising this during the campaign of, you're not changing anything. People are going to still take out loans to go to college because it's so expensive. So what are you going to do every time things get out of control again of people making a personalized decision? Nobody's forcing them. They're making a personal decision, take out that loan, that we're supposed to just foot the bill every single time. This doesn't make any sense, you guys. Not at all. Oh, well, people are struggling. People need relief. Blah, blah, blah. We understand that. That's why there's charitable stuff going on. That's why people can go get another job like I did, work 3 jobs, sacrifice like other people have been doing since they went to college. But no, they're going to sit there and foot the bill for other people. Now, if you notice, she mentioned the education secretary. You all are going to love this because we got our boy, the man, the myth, the legend, Peter Doocy doing yeoman's work on the White House lawn here with education secretary. So the education secretary, Miguel Cardona, openly admitted Wednesday that President Joe Biden's student loan debt forgiveness plan will not benefit Americans who already paid off their debt or never used debt to pay off for college in the first place. A lot of things I've been talking about on the show is just those that already have debt. There are people that are paying off other people's debt that never went to college. They never took out the debt themselves. So they're getting doubly effed. It's like complete. And he's just like, oh yeah, pretty much, yeah, they're screwed. We got a video clip on it. Don't worry. We will get there. We will watch it. The administration underscores what millions of Americans, those who paid off their loans, already believe is an unfair plan. Yeah, it's more than unfair. It's crazy. It's asinine. And this clip here, the way this guy answers questions, he dodges ones just like Karine Jean-Pierre does, as well as the rest of the Biden White House, and some of them are just absolutely just baffling.
It's a good day for America, a good day for those who are thinking about higher education in the future, because not only does it provide student loan forgiveness, it also fixes a system that's broken. And to those who are saying it's not fair, look, the aim of this is really to address the effects of the pandemic. It's my responsibility to make sure that people aren't coming out of the pandemic worse off than they were at the beginning.
But to the fairness question, the people that are sitting at home,
right,
having just paid off their student loans or having paid them off years ago, what's in it for them?
Right. Well, look, when we address some of the issues that could lead to default payments or default borrowers in the future, that affects everyone. We should be proud that we're able to help Americans that need help right now, just like we help businesses, small businesses during the pandemic. It's about making sure we're taking care of Americans and investing in our economy and in our people.
But
I would like to point out, and this is another talking point that the progressive left are using, and some guy wrote in the comments, and forgive me if you're a follower of the Bald Brad Show, but you made a silly comment, man, on one of the videos where you're like, well, where was all the enthusiasm? Where was the complaining and whining when there was the forgiveness through the PPP loans for businesses? Somebody else going out and deciding to take out a loan to go for college is vastly different than the government literally forcing your business to be shut down, not allowing employers to go to work, also not allowing customers to go into your place of business. Thus, in order to pay people, of which sometimes the government required you to do, is vastly different than somebody going out and taking out a loan, not being forced. Nobody's sitting there taking their hand, making them draw the pen and sign the signature. No. The government forced them. So if the government's going to force something upon you, they better reimburse you through the Fifth Amendment, by the way, to do so. That does not apply to student loans. So before you come at me, you better do your research. You better check yourself before you wreck yourself, because the PPP stuff, that loan forgiveness for businesses, is vastly different. And just because they had profits doesn't mean that it's still okay for them to shut them down and not allow them to do business and not allow their employers to show up so their employers can help run the business as well. And sometimes, even if the business was open, it still is not going to apply to that analogy even in the first place. So no matter which way you work at it, you got to do some squirrely thinking, my friend, to sit there and say, well, the student loan debt forgiveness is on par with the PPP stuff. This whole thing this guy's pushing here of trying to correlate it is exactly what the progressive left are trying to do and making them equal, and they are not equal. One requires force, the other one is freaking pure. That's what you wanted to do. Nobody forced you to do it.
Just the final one on this.
Sure.
The people that already paid their student loans,
Right.
they don't get anything out of this deal.
Right.
That's right. Okay. Speaker Pelosi said last year she thought that this was something a president could not do. It would require an act of Congress. So is this legal?
Yeah, look, the HEROES Act, page 637 to be exact, provides access, gives me the authority to provide a waiver to ensure that Americans are not worse off after an emergency, a national emergency, which the pandemic was.
And the big focus here is on college and grad school today. We heard Dr. Fauci yesterday talking about grade school kids, and he said, I don't think it's forever irreparably damaged anyone, talking about remote learning. Do you agree with that?
Look, we know remote learning doesn't substitute for in-person learning. That's why we're thrilled the American Rescue Plan dollars is being used to provide tutoring, to provide additional supports. This school year, our students need us to level up education across the country, get back to making sure kids are reading, math, making sure that they have the supports that they need. I do believe that while remote learning helped during the pandemic, it's no substitute for in-person learning.
And
The answer was no, Peter. It didn't do anything. It was actually extremely harmful for students. That was the answer he should have gave. I'm a teacher. I see it in the classroom. I see the damage COVID did to students. I teach mathematics, which is already hard without COVID happening. So this whole thing of like him going, well, it helped, but it didn't help, and trying to just underline and underskirt the whole damage that Anthony Fauci did, as well as honestly, even frankly, Trump for not getting the economy back and up and running. I understand we can't put all the blame on him because you have the localities in the states that were shutting everything down. He can't force states to do certain things on a federal level, especially as an executive branch. But him going, oh, well, the whole remote learning, well, yeah, it wasn't a great thing. But at the end of the day, he doesn't want to sit there and throw Anthony Fauci in the fire, which he should have right there. It was a prime opportunity because, look, we all know COVID-19 did some freaking irreversible damage to some kids growing up, whoever was in school during it.
I know that you guys gave, I think it's $27 billion to school districts to make sure that kids are caught up. What kind of follow-up are you doing to make sure that these students who missed out on so much time are actually caught up?
That's a great question, and I'll be very frank with you. There was a lot of funding through the American Rescue Plan dollars, and rightfully so. Our kids suffered a lot, but now we're putting up new systems of accountability to make sure the money is going to the classrooms and the students are getting the support that they deserve.
But just in terms of making sure that kids who are in fifth grade right now are all at a fifth grade level, what can you do or what are you doing?
Well, state and local governments are the ones that move forward their assessment systems. What we're doing is providing support, accountability, and technical assistance to make sure that they're assessing where their students are and providing tutoring and after-school programming to catch these students up. That's why the American Rescue Plan dollars made so much sense, and that's why across the country, all states are benefiting from it.
So he has no answer. Yeah, and I'm telling you as a teacher, you guys, there is no assessment. There is no plan to make sure that if they're in fifth grade, they're actually reading at a fifth grade level. And if they can't read at a fifth grade level going into sixth grade, that you don't advance them. That's not a thing anymore. That kind of was pretty much done over the Bush administration with the No Child Left Behind Act. You don't get held back anymore. As far as I'm aware, I actually don't know a single student, while I've been a teacher for like 5-6 years now, that has ever been held back. You're talking thousands of kids. There are kids that don't know how to draw a straight line. I'm not talking about middle school. We're talking about seniors in high school. Can't draw a triangle. Can't draw a circle. Don't know what a line is. Okay? So that whole thing of, are they going to be assessed if they can't read at a fifth grade level? How are they going to know? That's not going to happen. Peter Ducey, I'm sorry, brother. That's just not going to happen. He doesn't have an answer. We saw that through that in terms of the education secretary. They don't have a clue on how all this is going to happen. They don't know how to measure it. But he's keep pushing this whole, well, we got all this money, great. The kids are suffering and all these things. So it's gonna cause damage and has caused damage, and we're already seeing the massive ramifications. Us as teachers, we're already trying to figure out how we can remedy this in the school system ourselves. Of how can we sit there and fill missing gaps in knowledge on top of the missing gaps in knowledge that students already had even before COVID? Because through their education, they're gonna have holes in all their knowledge in terms of mathematics. Before COVID, we'd have to fill those. So now they just extrapolated those missing gaps of knowledge because of COVID. And we're expecting to see this for the next 10 or 15 years, the ramifications of COVID. So I don't know where Anthony Fauci's getting his thinking. I don't know where the education secretary is getting his thinking. And by the way, as a teacher, I'm not even for the Department of Education. I don't think we need a Department of Education. I don't know why we have a Department of Education, but I love that everybody's talking about reform and all these things. You're not seeing any reform. You're not seeing anything. So regarding the student loan debt forgiveness, people are just going after Karine Jean-Pierre, Jen Psaki, Joe Biden. You got Florida Governor Ron DeSantis here coming after Joe Biden once again. We had a video clip of him the other day going after Joe Biden on his student loan debt forgiveness. Now he's slamming President Joe Biden for his plan to bail out a large number of Americans from having to pay back a substantial portion of their student loans. Again, anybody under $125,000 is going to get $10,000. And for Pell Grant, it's $27,000. So we got Ron DeSantis here, again, doing yeoman's work pretty much like Peter Doocy, calling out Joe Biden for basically pushing this through and screwing over a certain sector of America.
Obviously, the fairness and all that is very important, but it's not a good fiscal or monetary policy. And so you see that. But then you also have the fact that they're doing that with zero reform to the universities and the loans and everything that's happened that's clearly way, way out of whack. And then, I think this is still important. Some people may not care as much. He does not have the constitutional authority to do this. It's very unfair, to have a truck driver have to pay back a loan from somebody that got like a PhD in gender studies. That's not fair. That's not right. And so, and then you also just have the fact, like, if you're going to talk about debt, then you should look at, okay, who has benefited the most from all this exorbitant debt that's been taken out over the last generation? It's the universities. They have bloated administrative budgets. They have all this, although in Florida, since I've been governor, no tuition increases at our state universities. We haven't allowed that. Because all it does is they plow it in, and they will expand like the DEI office or something else like that, and it has no real impact on the quality of the education when they're raising the tuition. It just creates more administrative bloat, and that's been going on, and the colleges and universities have gotten a free ride at this. So, my view is if you're going to do some type of student loan, relief, it's not really relief because people are still paying for it, but the people that should pay for it is not the American taxpayers. It should be the universities should be responsible for that. If they're producing people that went deep into debt and their degree is not worth anything and they're not able to make enough money to pay it back, well, then that's on them. And they've had an incentive to get more and more loans taken out and then put it in their pocket. So we should look at these.
So as much as I love Ron DeSantis, I don't fully agree with that idea, even though I said previously that universities should pay for it. I think there is some truth to that, which is why I mentioned it. The issue is not necessarily just the universities, but more on an individual level of you as an individual that chose to do it, take out that loan, are responsible. And like I said on the show yesterday, where does that thinking end in terms of, well, we need to relieve people of their debt that they have for universities because when they got out of the pandemic, well, they were all kind of screwed up in terms of financial because of everything that went on. Well, why doesn't it apply to your finances for your car in terms of you financing the vehicle, your RV, your boat, your mortgage? Like, why are we just so hyper focused on our student loan debt? There's a lot of people that have mortgages. Why are we not paying that off as taxpayers? So that's again, just the linear logic of it all just doesn't make any sense. So again, I think it shouldn't just be left up to the universities. More so, it should be left up to the individuals. The next line would be the universities. But like I said, you're required to pay off your own debt. I'm not required to pay it off at all. If you want to do some charity or something like that and do some sort of fund where you want to raise money for a family that's struggling, again, that's already built into the cake. That's already something we can do as a society and have done as a society and still do as a society.
Universities, but what Biden is doing, it's going to cause more inflation, which is what you just had one of Obama's economists come out and say. This is the worst time to do this. It's going to fuel inflation. This is not good policy. Obviously, the fairness and all that is very important, but it's not a good fiscal or monetary policy. And so you see that. But then you also have the fact that they're doing that with zero reform to the universities and the loans and everything that's happened that's clearly way, way out of whack. And then, I think this is still important. Some people may not care as much. He does not have the constitutional authority to do this. He is.
If you enjoyed this video, hit.
So that's from Blaze TV, folks, that posted that clip of Ron DeSantis. You can also find it on Twitter as well. But he's right. And again, a lot of people are just emphasizing, again, including myself, I'm part of this, emphasizing those that already paid off their loans because we're frustrated. We feel cheated out. And I'm not saying that I'm advocating for student debt forgiveness for myself in terms of now I want to check for the stuff that happened before. I don't want this to be implemented at all. I don't think it's a good thing. And Ron doesn't think it's a good thing. A lot of people that are constitutionalists don't believe it's a good thing. It's going to hurt inflation. And like we keep saying, this debt is just going to reoccur again in 5 years. You're not changing a damn thing. If anything, you're screwing over a lot of people and pissing a lot of people off. Furthermore, they're also talking about how the student debt cancellation plan is going to affect military recruitment. So we have here a veteran, Johnny Joey Jones, that's a tongue twister, reacted to President Joe Biden's plan to cancel student loan debt for Americans making less than $125,000 a year. He said, "I cannot believe I gave 2 legs for my tuition," Jones posted on Twitter, referring to the price he paid while serving as a U.S. Marine to have his college paid for. "What a dope I am," he added. "Oorah." The veteran's tweet quickly went viral, racking up more than 40,000 likes in a matter of hours. Jones lost both legs and suffered serious damage to his right arm, his forearm, and both wrists in 2010 while serving as an explosive ordnance disposal (EOD) bomb technician in Afghanistan. The Fox News contributor was not the only one to express some feelings about Biden's announcements. As reported by the Daily Wire, others online called the move to cancel student debt effing insanity and a real slap in the face for those who paid off their debts and opted to not take out loans they couldn't afford. All this means people can start finally to climb out from under the mountain of debt, Biden claimed in his remarks to the White House on Wednesday, to finally think about buying a home or starting a family or starting a business. And by the way, when this happens, the whole economy is better off. Don't you just love that of going like, now that we got you out of debt, now you can start thinking about starting and buying a home or starting a business and go back into debt. Because a lot of times, if you're buying a home, what are you going to get, folks? A 30-year fixed mortgage. If you're lucky, you're doing a 15-year fix. So you're just going to go back into debt. I mean, realistically, $10,000 isn't that much. If you only have $10,000 saved to buy a home, financially, probably not a good thing. You want around 20% if you're going to opt in to buy a home. That's kind of the general rule of thumb. If you don't have it, go, well, Brad, that sounds crazy. It's not crazy, you guys. You just have to save up for about a while or a decade and work multiple jobs. Nobody said it was easy. It's going to be hard, but that's the way and route you want to do it. If you're only putting 1 to 3% down, not a good idea at all in terms of finances and financially for the future. So I just love that aspect. They're like, oh, now that you have a whole bunch of forgiveness, just go take out more debt. Just lovely. If you recall too, before we were talking about military recruitment was already on the decline with everything that Joe Biden's doing. Now, again, they're emphasizing this once again, where a plan from President Joe Biden to cancel this $10,000 student loan debt is already going to worsen what's already a lackluster military recruitment. So you have Cole Lyle, the executive director of veteran advocacy group Mission Roll Call, told the Daily Wire that declines in recruitment have been driven by low unemployment in the broader economy, the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan conflict, and perceived partisanship among military leaders, among other issues. Yet recruitment into an all-volunteer military hinges upon strong benefits that match those available from attending college. The experience the military gives you, a lot of people use it. Certainly most people who join the military have a sense of service, but a lot of people look at the incentives as well. The GI Bill, the VA home loan program, and the education and training that they get in specific jobs. If you come from a disadvantaged backgrounds, having those things can rocket you into the middle class and upper middle class. Lieutenant General Thomas Sphere, who leads the Heritage Foundation Center of National Defense, told the Daily Wire that the Biden administration's loan cancellation plans takes away another tool from military recruiters. A significant portion of people come to the military after having tried college and it didn't work out. That used to be a big way that people would come to the military, but this debt forgiveness, that's likely to dramatically reduce as a motivator to get people in the door. So if you're going like, hey, one of the biggest motivators to get military people in, or at least recruit military people, is because we're going to basically pay for their college. Well, now that's not the incentive anymore, because why would people join the military when Joe Biden and the government's just going to cancel that debt in the first place? So once again, one of the main functions of government is to protect its citizens. whether that's domestic or abroad, and we can't even get people to get in to protect us from those that are either domestic or abroad because the government's sitting there once again outcompeting itself. From time and time again, we see them outcompete the private sector all the time, whether that's the education system to freaking businesses, whatever it may be. They're consistently putting themselves as a business and outcompeting other things, and now they're freaking cannibalizing themselves in terms of military service and getting those recruitments in. Indeed, a nonpartisan analysis from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School noted that loan cancellation announcement could prompt students to reorganize their financials and financing towards additional borrowing out of the expectation for more debt elimination in the future. Like I said, this is supposedly, if it gets renewed year after year, I think it's supposed to extend till 2031. So a lot of people are now looking to go back into debt, to go back to school, so they can have their debt paid off by the government, or in other words, the taxpayers. So once again, you're looking at another decade of this. For those that never went to college, for the next 10 years, you could be sitting there paying off somebody else's debt to go to college, even though you yourself never went. I mean, that is so unbelievably crazy, and they don't care. The Biden administration doesn't care. He also went on to say, if this is a one-time thing and it never happens again, I don't know if that will be a very negative effect on the military recruitment, he said. But the problem is we don't know if that's going to happen again because the president has now been set. You had this man who's successfully oversaw troop and equipment withdrawal from the Iraq during the Operation New Dawn, and the military education benefits are now competing with incentives from corporate America. Sounds a lot like what I just said, except he put it in one sentence. It used to be pretty rare that any kind of company would offer any employee educational benefits, and that has dramatically changed to the point where Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, a lot of these corporations, most entry-level jobs are now offering some sort of college program. The military has gotten mildly better, while everybody else has gotten vastly better. The military was the only place that offered college benefits, and now that's no longer the case. Yet, this individual, this lieutenant, suspects that the White House failed to consider the possibility of further crowding out military education benefits when discussing potential moves to cancel student debt. Look, they didn't think about this at all. Like we've said so many times on this episode and the one yesterday, they don't even know who's going to pay for it. They don't even know where the money's coming from. They don't even have this all figured out. They just wrote some stuff on a napkin and was like, hey, let's do it. It sounds a lot like Joe Biden rolling out of bed one morning, picking up the phone and saying, hey, let's pull out of Afghanistan. Didn't think about the ramifications. Didn't think about how we're going to freaking get all our equipment back home. What was the plan? Get the people out, have people falling from the airplane, thousands of feet in the air and dying, people in the wheel wells being frozen to death and crushed. You know, you got 13 military people being blown up in Afghanistan. You left $7 billion plus of military-grade equipment to the Taliban that has now taken roughshod over the entire country. You turn the country over to China and Russia, working in unison with one another with the Taliban. This is how the Biden administration does this stuff. This is their planning. You just think about it, write it on a napkin, and distribute it. Who cares who's going to pay for it? Who cares what happens? Who cares what the ramifications are? Look what we did. We kept the promise. Good. Check mark and off. I mean, it just shows you that you shouldn't have faith in the government. It really does. And it's so mind-boggling how Democrats are so willing just to hand over everything, their freedoms and all their responsibilities and everything to the federal government when they suck at everything. Can you imagine going, hey, let's go buy a house and not even worrying about how you're going to pay for it, where the money's going to come from, how many hours you're going to have to work a week, whatever it may be. That's literally what's happening here. Let's just go buy a house. Forget how it's going to get paid for. We'll figure that out later. Except on this end, we know who's going to pay for it later. You and I. So this whole thing is just what a scam, what a bamboozle, what a freaking money grab. And now we're all getting screwed for it while other people benefit. And if you're one of those recipients, good for you because you just cashed in big time. I'm happy for you. You got your money and you know what? You should take it because if we're going to all be bamboozled because of this, I'm trying to keep it PG, Joe Biden's handling of the economy, then so be it. You won the lottery. With that being said, folks, as always, I hope you enjoyed this Friday episode. Be on the lookout. We should have a Supernatural out on Saturday for all of you this go around. We'll see what we do. I think we're going to continue that Carmel Lane or Carmel, Maine house that's haunted. That guy's stuff is just crazy. I mean, I it's hard to sit through because it freaks the crap out of me. Last episode, if you watch Supernatural Saturday, I literally almost fell out of my chair. And I don't even know how that's possible. So this ain't Rolly, man. This thing's hard to fall out of. So can't wait to do Supernatural Saturday. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you later here on the Bald Brad Show.